Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. Today, we are embarking on a journey into the world of writing and its incredible power to transform our mental health and emotional landscapes. Our guest today has a personal story that exemplifies how writing can be an excellent tool for self-discovery as well as healing. For many, putting pen to paper holds the therapeutic potential in the way it allows them to confront the most challenging and complex emotions that often lie beneath the surface. I guess it's artist's power to navigate the intricate terrain of their own inner world, turning what they describe as inner yuck into something genuinely beautiful and healing. But this episode is more than just a look into her creative process. We're going to explore the intentional approach she takes in her writing, delving into the connection between faith and art, and redefining success in the world of creativity. It's about discovering how personal growth and healing can become integral parts of the artistic journey. So prepare to be moved and enlightened as we dive into the narrative of turning grief into a source of hope and inspiration, while also exploring the idea that words have the incredible ability to mend our hearts and minds. It's sure to leave you with a renewed appreciation for the therapeutic art of writing. Joining me today is author Lindsey Lamh. She's a homeschooling mom, a creative, intuitive introvert, and the embodiment of hope to those who are facing dark times and maybe searching for the light at the end of a long, dark tunnel. So without delay, welcome to the show, Lindsey.
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It's just an honor to be here.
Well, I'm really excited. I was going through, I like to do research on people before we have our conversation, just so I'm not going into it cold turkey, because I am also an introvert. And I don't know about you, but sometimes those starter conversations can get a little awkward. You're like, hi, I'm Jennifer. And that's the end of the conversation.
Yes.
So, yeah, I was just poking around. And so I was like, oh, I didn't realize you were a homeschooling mom, because we are also a homeschooling family. So that's kind of cool. We have a lot in common. And I was just really thrilled to find that.
Well, that's wonderful. I run into that a lot, especially with women authors that, I read their book and I kind of snoop online and I find out they have a lot in common with me. And I think that makes the writing more fun too, because then you're like, I know the hurdle you had to get over to produce this work, It's impressive.
It is. And I think, and like we're going to talk about, the writing sometimes is definitely a way to process a lot of the overwhelm or just the stress of everything. It's like, I need to get lost in my imagination for a couple of hours. So everybody go away.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, let us get to know you a little bit more. Tell us about who you are, a little bit about your background as a writer and an artist, all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've been very artsy since high school and earlier. I was homeschooled as well, so I had lots of time for just writing for fun, drawing, painting for fun. I didn't really take that seriously as a hobby even until several years ago. I think it was when I went on a trip with my husband for our 5th year anniversary. We just kind of did a fun little creative exercise. I would write a little bit and I would bounce ideas off of him of like, oh, what should happen next in this story? And I had no agenda tied to where it was going to go. I was just like, this will just be fun. And that kind of rekindled in me a love for storytelling. And my husband always is encouraging me to finish something, like if you're going to write, like just finish something. So I think that his encouragement to be a little bit more disciplined, and then also just that rekindling of the love of the art, is where it started several years ago. And then it just kind of, the timing lined up to where I needed exactly what you were talking about a minute ago. I needed to escape reality because my reality was very dark and I needed a sense of control. And I felt like the world that I was creating at that time, I was working on a manuscript for a fantasy novel. And so, it's a little bit based in reality, but there's magic and there's elves and there's, all kinds of things like that. And I think that was extremely therapeutic when I was going through a season of depression and my life had big boulders that were immovable, that were just daunting every day, and I had no control over them. And just being able to go to the writing and have to regain a little bit of that agency, I guess, was what I needed. Yeah.
That's awesome. And let me just say that there is something to be said for a supportive husband. The one who, even if it's him saying, just finish something, to know that he's back there behind you. Like mine is the same way. He's like, he wants to read everything I write. And, he's my biggest cheerleader. He's like, that's the best. You're so good at this. And I'm like, no, it stinks. And he's like, no, this is the best. So it's so nice to have that. And so I can totally relate to be like, thank you, honey. It's nice to have you there in my corner. So that is also one of those I don't know how people do it without somebody supporting them, especially if there are kids and raising families and homeschooling and all that. Like without somebody just to hold your hand through it. Ooh, we are blessed ladies.
Yes, absolutely. Amen to that.
So tell us a little bit about if you're willing to walk through, what were the mental health struggles and the grief and that kind of thing that you had to walk through, to share your story with us.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of PTSD from some injuries that happened when I was a teen, and I hadn't ever really processed some of that stuff as like actual trauma. So I was learning about that and the long-term effects of trauma, on your psychology and stuff. But at the same time, I also have a chronic illness. I won't really get into the details of like the diagnosis or whatever, but it operates very much like chronic pain, and it is a daily experience. And there are seasons where it'll flare up and it will be much more unbearable. And I think I was going through a time where I was pregnant with our fourth child. I believe it was the fourth. We're gonna have six now, so my timeline is a little fuzzy. I'm expecting our sixth right now. Yeah, thanks. But it was like that combination of like I was pregnant and dealing with all of that, and it's a whole thing itself, as well as flare up of my chronic illness, and it just really made me feel trapped, especially with pregnancy making those symptoms worse. It felt like these things are both trapping me in a corner here, and there's no escape from the daily experience of them. And I think that kind of drug up from the past a bunch of the trauma and the things that I hadn't known how to deal with. And I began to learn about grief as a human experience, because I wouldn't have thought I was grieving or someone who had lost anything, really, because I have a grandmother who has passed away. But besides her, I haven't really lost anyone close to me, no friends in tragic accidents, like nothing like that. I've been incredibly blessed to have everyone still in my life. So I wouldn't have thought I'm grieving, but I think that the chronic illness, definitely the loss of good health and the loss of opportunities that I could do if I wasn't struggling with this illness, that is a valid type of grief that I needed to go through the grieving process to actually heal from, not even heal from it, but just to rediscover some wholeness in my life. Just mentally, mental health is such a tricky thing because you don't know that it's getting bad until it's getting really bad sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Well, thanks for sharing, because I know sometimes sharing those things so publicly, it can be a little intimidating, a little scary, but I think that, and it's something that I've always believed, is that we're all given a story for a reason, and it's not to keep it to ourselves, and it's to share, because you just never know when the next person is going to need to hear what you went through and how you got through it. So utilizing your writing and your art and that kind of thing, how do you have a process that you intentionally sit down and work through in writing, or is it just, emotions flood and you put it on the page? Like, what does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So, as in general, I'm an organized person. So with my writing, I try to be organized as far as like structuring things and giving myself deadlines that I totally don't have to fulfill, but I find that it helps motivate me to make my goals. But an interesting thing that I didn't realize until this year, actually, was that I kind of am disconnected from a lot of my emotions. And I, as an adult, need to learn how to feel my feelings. And that came up in my writing. And so my writing, in some ways, like, it was a vehicle to like help me find a safe place in the midst of some mental illness turmoil. But it also has been very healing for me, because it has taught me things about myself that I didn't know. And one of those was that in my writing, I was holding the reader back from key moments in the plot, and kind of like having things happen off screen, or downplaying them, or on the other extreme, overplaying them, because I felt like this needs to be an intense moment, but I didn't know how to do that emotionally. So I would just do it like with drama or, whatever, action or something like that. And so I think that that was very telling. And my editor pointed it out to me and said, like, here's a great book to read on emotions in fiction. And just that process of doing that and learning that about myself and learning that about writing helped me to realize I need to do that in all of my life. And so I'm extremely thankful for that. Mm-hmm.
It's so wild because we went through infertility, and then it was, I was blessed to carry a child and gave birth to the child, and she was perfect and wonderful. And I hated my life and I hated myself. I went through postpartum psychosis for the first year of her life and didn't know really what it was. Like the doctor was like, no, you just need more birth control. Hormones are out of control. Let's go back here. And and it was one of those secret struggles that, I didn't share the emotional stress that I was under, because it was always, you put on your good tennis shoes and you deal with stuff. You know what I mean? Like you tighten up the laces and you just push forward. And that's how my mentality had kind of been shaped over the years. And so I thought it was weakness to say there's something wrong with me. And that was almost 14 years ago. And so it just in the last, 2 to 3 years, really, because I went and saw counselors and we prayed through stuff, and, Jesus, and I know he's there and I know the right answers. That's not a problem. But it wasn't until I started writing characters and watching my characters process emotion and come to these understandings. And I thought, how bizarre. Like, it was the craziest thing. But it was watching them grieve and go through a grieving process that I realized that loss, it doesn't matter what you're losing, whether it is losing your health or a loved one or the ability to do X, Y, Z, loss is loss, and you have every right to grieve that. And so just it's been like an emotional revolution here the last couple of years, just as I've watched myself and my characters process things, and I'm like, whoa, it's wild. I never really thought that's how that would work, but it does.
And I find that really interesting that you had like a debt to grief for many years. It didn't just go away, and I think that as a society in America, we really don't know how to handle grief, and we really don't know how to process it. And the way we talk about it also is that we need to heal from it. And I would disagree with that and say, like,
I would too.
Part of your life, even if you are able to come to a healthier place, that's going to be with you for the rest of your life, And I think that it's a wonderful thing that you're doing the work now, because it builds up, and it
does. Because you're yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's just the wound wants you to pay attention to it.
Yes. And that, I was going to say, like, we like to stuff those holes, those empty places, with things or with new experiences, thinking that we can fill the chasm that was left. And I don't want to fill that chasm. I want to remember. I shouldn't have to forget it, but I want to do it in such a way that's healthy. I want to be able to look back with fondness and say, that was a moment where there was growth, where there was opportunity for change, where there was an opportunity for me to hold a hand out to somebody else and say, I've been there, I can walk with you now, because I've not that I want to experience it, but now that I have, let's put it to use, and not just cover it up. It's like, oh my gosh. So I'm in Alabama, and with the way we deal with potholes is like, you just kind of cover them up and hope for the best, but then it rains really for a week straight and you're like, oh, it's back. That's kind of how we deal with grief. It's like, we're just going to fill it in, and as things pile on top of it, that foundation is not very strong. It's going to crumble again, and you're going to be reminded of it instead of, actually filling the hole and fixing it, and dealing with it appropriately. Not that grief needs to be fixed, but you get my analogy.
Right. Yeah. Just that, our lives are already so complex, and we're already dealing with so much emotional input every day, that unless your grief has a healthy scaffolding, it's going to collapse, not just, your emotions. It's going to ruin your whole day, like derail the entire train, because it's powerful,
It is. I heard a really great, oh gosh, it was a poem, and I can't remember exactly how it went. It was very long. It was beautiful, but it was talking about how grief is like the butter that you're folding into a project, a baking project. It's always there, and you're going to see the effects of it, even when the final product is on the table. But it doesn't go away, and you don't want it to go away, because that grief, or that butter in that case, is like, it's serving a purpose, and it's bringing flavor, it's bringing color and that kind of thing to life. And so I keep going back to that, because we have, everybody has their multiple experiences with loss and that kind of thing. And so, but I keep going back to that. I'm like, that it was a beautiful, hard moment in life. And from that, we're going to grow and change. So, and I don't think that it could happen without, I don't know how people navigate grief without some sort of faith, which is what I want to bring up next. Like, how does your faith, this is something that we kind of had a pre-show communication about, like, how does your faith integrate with your art?
Yeah. So I was thinking about that. That was my favorite question that you kind of prompted me with a little bit. And I really enjoyed thinking about that question because, sometimes you don't think consciously about it, but your faith is interacting. And I think my favorite way is that I want to talk about certain themes and certain things that are a little bit deeper than just what's going on in the characters. And one of the themes that came up pretty strongly in my book, A Voracious Grief, was that, in fiction, you have a lot of examples of people being heroic. And I think this really this shaped the way I was able to end the story. And I really slaved over that ending. I didn't know how I was going to end it for probably 9 months of writing, working on it. It was really difficult to land on the proper ending that would do the story justice. And I think part of that was because I didn't want the main character, Ambrose, to be a hero in the sense of like, he's going to triumph over his enemy physically or just like even symbolically, but that just did not feel appropriate to the story. And I think what I settled on instead was this idea of sainthood or a kind of spiritual heroism where, we're all saints if we are loving God and we're in his family. He calls us that, but we often don't take that title on ourselves because we don't feel worthy of it. And we think saintly means holy, right? Yeah. And I'm obviously not holy, so I can't be a saint. But I think what the Lord's perspective of us is someone who can act out in faith heavenly realities that are not yet our reality. But just because it's not our reality in fact and physical form doesn't mean that we can't act out on it, and I think that's where faith comes in. And so in the book, it's kind of like this, it's really interesting because as a character, Ambrose has very little faith on his own. He has so much despair and sorrow and struggle that he has maybe only like the mustard seed Jesus was talking about, right? And I mean, my favorite thing in the story is how he borrows faith from his friends and from people around him, and they can support him. And even when he doesn't believe fully in his heart that there is hope, they tell him there is hope, And I think that's my favorite thing that came out, was that kind of community-ness that the church should embody, and also the our identity in Christ and how we can walk that out.
I love that. And I'm going to ask you to tell us about your book in just a minute because, it's out and it's ready for people to read. But yeah, let's talk a little bit more about integrating the faith and the process. Is there, is your book considered like a Christian fantasy? Is it considered just a fantasy? Where's your genre at?
Well, my genre is Gothic horror.
Okay.
I know that many Christians would be like, well, horror can't be Christian. I would beg to differ, but do you know who Flannery O'Connor is?
Yes.
Famous Southern Gothic. I mean, you live in Alabama, so
Right.
But she was well known for being too Christian for like New York publishing world, and also too gory and like intense or graphic or whatever, violent for Christians. And I love that she exists in the history of literature because I'm like, I aspire to that. I want to be able to say like, let's not gloss over and Christianize and just make happy and pretty every aspect of fiction in order to call it Christian. Because, Christians slay dragons too.
True story. Revelation, anybody?
Right. Or just the entire Bible.
Right.
So, yes, I have a few opinions about that. So I would not call my book Christian fiction, I've definitely just put it in the genre that the characters and the plot fit with. As a according to like the literary devices that people use. But it has very Christian themes. It has a hymn quoted in it and, allusions to scripture. So I think anyone who knows what to look for would be like, it is Christian.
Gotcha. Okay. No, that's awesome. And mine, like my first two books are specifically Christian fiction, as there are references to God, prayer, scripture, those kinds of things, and the whole theme is redemption. And so I was just I'm always curious how how do you integrate? I mean, you see C.S. Lewis did it, and Tolkien did it. All these great authors who
masterfully, yes.
I'm telling you, and I'm like, how? Because you can totally see it, and but mine, and so I'm always curious how people navigate that because it intrigues me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think so. I grew up reading so much C.S. Lewis and a little bit of Tolkien and a lot of other of the similar genre of Christian authors. And it intimidated me. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I didn't take the writing seriously until more recently, was because I felt like to be a Christian artist, that's what you have to aspire to. And it just felt impossible, to reach that type of a standard. But as I read more books that were either written by Christians or written more recently, probably not by Christians, but it was just a very good story that called to mind a lot of Christian truth to me. I think that kind of dispelled that impression that I had from a young age, that in order to be good Christian art, it has to be like a masterpiece or whatever. We'll let C.S. Lewis continue to be the Christian genius, but I think that you really, all it takes is you just need to tell a good story, and you need to do it well. And whether that is like improving your writing craft or just improving your practice as a human being of thinking deeply about things and caring deeply about things, I think that those are the elements that make a good story. And readers can tell. They will pick up a book and have an entertaining afternoon reading it. And if they go away and they don't really think about it that much, that's that. But when it goes beyond that to like being transformative or being something that offers comfort to a place they didn't maybe even know was needing a kind word. Those are the kinds of stories that I want to write.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's clear that, over time, being afraid of the writing maybe, or just intimidated by it up till now, like clearly your definition of success as an artist has kind of evolved maybe through your journey. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's really tempting to think of success as like how many people are going to read what I've written. And it's really tempting to think that that will validate all the many hours of work and labor and heartache that's involved. And, and I think that because I'm just really, really thankful that I have written A Voracious Grief as the first book that I was going to publish. I finished a different manuscript, the fantasy one, first. So I don't really say this is my first book, but it's the first one that I'm publishing. And I think that that has really shaped who I am as an author and how I think about my audience. And because this book is so personal and has such just like an ambition to bring healing where there is brokenness and to bring light and hope where there is despair, I think that helps me kind of set the tone for how I want anything that I write to work. That I want it to not be as much about me as providing that benefit to someone, to where even if your book was able to change one person's life or bring a sense of healing or hope to one person who had lost hope, that would be successful, And then apart from that, even if you think about the healthy exercise of my own writing that and being able to process those things, I think that's successful for me also.
Yes, I agree. And yes, would I like my books to make money? Definitely. That would be fantastic. Thank you very much. But I write I write a lot of times. I write for myself, and it's books that I want to read. It's books that I know that I can't be the only one that's looking for something new and different. And so that's why I write. And if what I have to say, I mean, like if there's somebody who does find that working their way through the grief process, there is hope on the other side, then it's been worth it. Like you said, one person, I'm good as long as that it has hit its mark. And I think as long as we take ourselves out of the picture, because I think a lot of times, authors, it's very obvious and a lot of the marketing that goes with it too, but also in writing, authors go for that shock factor or just wanting to get noticed. And so we live in this world of sensationalism where, authors want to prioritize that wow factor over connecting with the audience authentically. I don't know. I think there are a lot of, I think it was one of the words that you had used in our pre-show communications, vanity. There's a lot of vanity that goes into being an author sometimes, and you don't want to be that way. I don't want to be that way. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the work, and I want it to be about, I want my work to glorify God first and foremost. What are your thoughts or insight on maybe how artists can maintain that authenticity and spotlight off themselves kind of thing?
Yeah. So, everything I've been hearing from the get-go with trying to think about my author brand or what I want my website to look like and all those kinds of things, every advice you get is promote on social media, build up a social media thing. And I think that sphere of the social media platforms is very short attention span, very sensation driven, very like you yourself as a producer need to long to have people's attention and do whatever you need to do to get their attention. And I think that the antidote to that and what will really keep authors grounded back to their vision of why they're writing, is to be as connected as possible to the people you're writing for. And for me, that looks like I envision my ideal reader as someone who is a woman primarily. Guys can read my book if they want, but I feel like it's probably going to connect a little more with women. And so women who are maybe around my age or a little older and have gone through some things and are, it's basically kind of a description of myself. Someone who's maybe deconstructing from their faith, or someone who's really grieving a loss or a midlife crisis where things haven't turned out the way you wanted them to. And now you're looking for, where is the hope for the future? What is the direction for the future? And that's where I want to come in with my books and speak into that faith to those specific people. And a lot of my friends are those specific people. And so sometimes when I'm just thinking about writing, I think very specifically about a woman that I know, and a conversation we had recently. And it's really important to me to have real life people in mind when I am making decisions about what goes in the book or what I need to change, because I'm writing it for people, and those people have real hurts and real beautiful personalities and things like that. And I want that to be apparent in my writing. I do think that when you are writing for a purpose that is a lot more personal and has a deeper connection with you yourself, that's going to come out in your goals and what choices you make. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that will help in achieving a brand, because we are a brand. We are, as are you self-published? Did you self-publish?
Yeah.
Okay, which is this whole ballgame in and of itself. Like that is a whole thing. And so you're responsible for creating the brand that you want other people to perceive you as. And so everything that you write, everything you communicate, how you communicate, it all matters. And so you're going to communicate, and then you're going to draw the people who are attracted to what you put out there. And so I hope that I never lose sight of that. So let's throw that into the open floor part of the show. Is there anything that you would like to talk about specifically? Tell us, more about your book or about your work that's coming up, anything like that.
Well, I think if there's any writers who are listening to this podcast and wondered, like I mentioned social media, and you probably have all heard the advice, read the articles, seen all of the stats of like, this is how many readers. And yes, so the big question then might be, well, what do you do instead? Like, what is the other option? And, I'm new at this and I'm exploring, but I have seen a couple things recently that were incredibly encouraging. So maybe I'll just share a few of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my town has like a farmers slash craft market throughout the summer. It's every Saturday, and anybody can apply, and the booth was like $5 to come and sell your product there. And so I wasn't the only author there, actually. There were several other authors, some on weeks that I was not having a booth, and then others we were both there at the same time. And honestly, the quality of conversations of people just stopping by and being curious and being like, oh, I'm a bigger reader. Oh, I like historical fiction. Oh, and just finding connection points to where they were interested enough to then say, so what is your story about? Oh, I also have depression, or my, sister or something has struggled with this type of thing, and just being able to see a real life person who is basically your reader standing right there in front of you, and also for them to see you as an author and just to hear in your voice that you care about them, that you know what you're talking about, and then just you've written a book, And I think that there were so many of those conversations that may or may not have ended with a sale, but I counted those as a win, And I think that who knows what will happen down the road with any of those conversations. There were also plenty of people who were like, oh, I'm in a book club. Maybe we'll read your book in our book club. Like, give me your email. And just things like that. You never know what kinds of opportunities are just going to walk by your table. So that was incredibly encouraging to me because starting out, I was like, I'm not going to even try to do the social media thing really. But I don't know what else is out there. And so I've been doing lots of just feet on the ground, try to connect with the library, try to find whatever local stores or event type of situations I can connect with and see what happens. So basically just trying to connect with anything local, libraries, local stores. I have a store that's interested in stocking some of my books. And they are more of the Gothic type of merchandise, so it's a good fit for them. Just things like that are very people-facing. And I really like that because I like to get to know some of my readers if I can,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you go? This is where I struggle with that. How do you go about creating maybe an elevator pitch? Like, how do you talk about what your book is about? Because see, people will be like, well, what's your book about? And I'm like, I got nothing. I don't know. I can't tell you.
I honestly just memorized something that was based on like a shorter version of the short blurb. You know how you write the blurb and it's got to have the hook and it's got to have kind of the middle and a hint of plot twist or whatever it is. And maybe like a question also filtered in there somewhere of like, will they work it out in the end? It's like you got to pack all of that in like 150 words. And so my editor and I had already done all the work of like refining the short blurb and the longer summary for the back of the book. And so I just basically kind of summarized the short blurb into 2 or 3 sentences and just memorized it. And the thing with doing the market table was after the first time that I did that, every couple minutes someone's stopping at my table and I'm giving them the same spiel again. The more you do it, the more it is flowing easily, and you can kind of think about like, oh, maybe I'll just throw this little detail in there. This person looks interested, And so I think that helps you get a level of comfort to where you don't feel like you're on the spot trying to make stuff up. And because I am horrible at that. If I'm on the spot, I just have to make stuff up. I say the most awkward things.
Me too. I'm like, I had somebody, and I was a guest on the podcast, and the lady had brought up my books, and we hadn't even been talking about them. We were just talking about life in general. And she was like, "So tell us about your books." And I'm like, "Well, it's about this woman." And I kind of froze. I was like, "She can do stuff," and it's really, But I get so nervous because I guess on the one hand, I don't want to give it all away. I'm scared I'm going to tell you too much, and then I'm like, "But what do you need to know about it?" And so that is. But I agree that meeting your readers face to face, that one is some of the most encouraging, because even if they don't pick up your book to read it, most of them will be like, "Oh, well, that is fantastic, and it's exciting, and it shows, that there are people who are still interested in reading books," because it's kind of hard to find those people sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, and I have plenty of people that go past and I'm offering free bookmarks and that are kind of like my business card also. And a lot of them will just be like, "Oh, I don't read." And it's hard for me to imagine living a life like that. Like, I don't read a ton because I'm a busy mom and I homeschool, but I'm a reader at heart. I would never say I don't read, even if I didn't read a book for a whole year, you know?
Goodness, I can't imagine either. I've always got at least 2 or 3 books going at a time, whether it's an audio book or, they're all different genres, just because I need to be able to know that I can go pick something up and just be like, I need a minute. I need to escape for a minute.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And it's also really nice that when they do pick up your book and then you get to meet them face to face again and they tell you it to your face for the most part. I've only had one person. She was a beta reader, so she wasn't even reading like the final product. She hurt my feelings, but but I kind of asked her to, but at the same time, I was like, you could have hurt my feelings a little nicer, but that's fine.
You didn't have to take me so seriously when I said, be honest.
Like, be honest, but let's layer some sugar in there if we can. That'd be great. A little padding, but to have them come back afterward and just be like, oh, I loved it, and I can't wait to read the next one, and that's always encouraging as well. So yes, those face-to-faces, they mean something. They mean a lot. So yeah, I agree, and I wish we had more opportunities to do that kind of thing. I wonder about the library. Like, did you get in with your library? Have you been and done something with your library?
It was a process because, I think the library has a system usually that they're used to ordering books from a certain distributor. And one of the things that I prioritized was getting a Library of Congress number for my book in the copyright and registering my copyright with them. That way, even though I'm not distributed by like all the big name booksellers, I'm still in the librarian system. I actually was on the phone with a librarian and she Googled it real quick in her system, was like, oh yeah, you're in our system. It was just like a validating thing to her, I think, of like, you're legit. So I feel like taking away any of those roadblocks is super helpful and just being as professional as possible. And they don't always expect you to be that way. So you kind of have to just advocate for yourself. But I just would kind of try to figure out who's the person that I need to speak to and try to actually have a conversation with them so that hopefully I can represent myself well.
That's awesome. And I agree. Like, self-published authors have to be even more professional, I think, than the traditionally published authors a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to legitimize yourself, unfortunately. I mean, but it is a good thing. It's not really an unfortunate thing because then that just helps you in the long run to not maybe make some mistakes you would hope not to. And one of the things that helps is my library has a local author program. I think they prioritize stocking local authors. So hopefully that's a trend across the states, but I'm not sure if it is.
That's cool. And I guess you just call your library and ask.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, nice. All right. So tell us how listeners can connect with you and your work.
Yeah, so I do have a website. It is lindseylamh.com, and lamb sounds like a lamb, but it's Lamh. So that's my pen name. And I also, if you wanted to email me or get on my newsletter, you can sign up or find my email through my website. So.
Okay, and that's going to be in the show notes. And where can they buy your book that is out now? Can they buy it on your website?
The easiest place to find it is on Amazon. It is in most all of the ebook distributors as well, if people prefer e-readers. So,
okay,
I'm hoping we'll have a hardback option in the future that may be not on Amazon. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but for now, just Amazon.
Nothing wrong with Amazon. Unfortunately, fortunately, there's nothing wrong with Amazon.
Yeah.
No matter how you feel about it. And that's something that I've been torn about because I've seen, a lot of authors and Amazon is kind of stingy with their royalties. And I get that there's we could talk about that for a whole nother hour, but it's going to be your most popular outlet. So if you want people to get to your books, Amazon's going to be the place to find it.
Yeah. And I kind of did the best of both worlds in that I didn't go through Kindle publishing. I went through draft to digital, but it's listed on Amazon. So people can find it and review it on Amazon, but I don't have to pay the steep royalties. The royalties are better over at draft to digital.
Nice. Yes, I have Ingram Spark and Amazon. So I've done it on both. And so there is a way to make sure you're getting the best value for your investment.
Yeah.
Definitely. Okay, what is one piece of advice or encouragement you want listeners to walk away with if they hear nothing else today?
I don't know. I just think reading books is a really healthy practice.
It is.
But reading older books is really wonderful too. And I don't I don't know if that's a thing that has gone out of style or if it's still very much a thing, but there's a lot of differences between how older books are written and how modern books are written. And a little bit of it is like a slower paced plot sometimes, and you have to stick with it. But I think that it's always well worth the sticking with. And yeah, if you need some good book recommendations, just email me because I've read tons of old books that I'm always extremely excited to talk about and share how great they are. So,
what's your favorite?
That is the impossible question.
Your favorite child, go, right?
Probably C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy or Till We Have Faces. Those tie very much. Yeah.
Nice. I love it. No, I think you're right. The way of writing has changed so much, whether it is, the vernacular and the vocabulary. And it's true for me with like movies. I would rather sit and watch an old movie from the 40s and the 50s because I just love the way they talked, the words that they chose to use. Like they just felt so different. And that's true with the pictures that are painted in books as well from just even 20 years ago. But yeah,
Right.
I agree. Old books are the way to go.
Well, make you smarter, increase your vocabulary and everything.
That's right. That's right. And just think, you can always make these allusions back to, well, this guy, he's pretty smart, and he said, and it makes you look good too. So, oh, well, Lindsey, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I just really wanted to thank you again for having me on. I felt like we've had a wonderful conversation and it's been a whole range of topics. So I've just been excited to spend some time with you this afternoon.
Oh, yeah. No, thanks for spending the time because it is so exciting. And congratulations, because that debut novel, like, it's done now. Now you just hit the ground running. You just go with it. That's awesome. So I'm so excited for you, and I can't wait to see your name just pop up time after time on my now recommended book list, because I know that's what's going to happen. Is I've already been poking around and put your name in Kindle, and I'm just like, I was like, okay, that was me. The author you follow is, and that's exciting. So congratulations.